For Derrick Rose, the story of gang ties is more complicated than most. Unlike Javers Crittenden or Steven Jackson, Rose never admitted to any gang affiliation. Yet, a single photograph nearly branded him with a reputation he's been working to shake ever since. Back in June 2009, during his early years with the Chicago Bulls, a photo surfaced online showing Rose at a party in Memphis. Flashing a hand sign many identified as belonging to the Gangster Disciples, one of Chicago's most notorious gangs. The image spread quickly, amplified by the fact that Rose was only 20 years old and had just started becoming the face of his hometown franchise. The media pounced on it. Columnists speculated about whether the Bulls' new superstar had gang ties, while fans worried it could tarnish the league's next big star. Rose didn't waste time responding. Through the Bulls organization, he issued a public statement. Recently, a photo of me has been circulating that appears to show me flashing a gang sign. This was taken while I was in school in Memphis and was meant as a joke, a bad one, I now admit. I want to make it clear that I have never been, and never will be, affiliated with any gang. I am anti-gang, anti-drug, and anti-violence. It was an emphatic denial, but the damage had been done. Once that kind of image is attached to your name, it lingers. And in Rose's case, it didn't help that he grew up in Englewood, Chicago, one of the most violent neighborhoods in America, where gang activity is a way of life. For many, simply surviving Englewood without joining a set is seen as a miracle. Rose's background made the controversy believable to some, even without proof. He grew up surrounded by the Gangster Disciples' influence, often seeing friends and neighbors pulled into the cycle of violence. In his own words, basketball was the only thing that saved me. His family, especially his mother, worked tirelessly to keep him focused on hoops instead of the streets. Still, rumors followed him. In 2012, after Chicago rapper Lil Jojo, a young affiliate of the Gangster Disciples, was murdered in a drive-by. Reports surfaced that Rose had quietly paid for the funeral expenses. Years later, he also stepped in to cover the funeral of Jonah Watkins, a 6-month-old baby tragically killed in gang crossfire. On one hand, these were generous, compassionate acts from someone who understood the pain of Chicago's streets. On the other, they reignited whispers that Rose's generosity was a subtle acknowledgement of ties to local gangs. Online forums and gossip sites only added fuel to the fire. Some claimed Rose secretly wore Gangster Disciples gear during interviews, though closer inspection revealed it was simply his personal logo, or even symbols tied to the Chicago city flag, not gang imagery. Others argued that by paying for funerals, Rose was showing loyalty. The truth, Rose has never once glorified or endorsed gang life. In fact, he's consistently spoken out against it. What makes Rose's story so unique is that it highlights the fine line between survival and perception. Growing up in Englewood meant he couldn't escape proximity to gangs, but being in the NBA meant every move, every gesture, every photograph would be scrutinized under a national spotlight. Even when his intentions were pure, people saw what they wanted to see. And yet, Rose's legacy isn't about gang affiliation. It's about resilience. After becoming the youngest MVP in NBA history, suffering devastating injuries, and enduring countless comebacks, Rose has proven that his story is one of perseverance, not scandal. Off the court, he launched the Rose Scholars Program in 2018, donating millions to fund education for underprivileged youth. He has used his platform to advocate for peace and provide opportunities for kids facing the same dangers he once did. And yet, Rose's legacy isn't about gang affiliation. It's about resilience. After becoming the youngest MVP in NBA history, suffering devastating injuries, and enduring countless comebacks, Rose has proven that his story is one of perseverance, not scandal. Off the court, he launched the Rose Scholars Program in 2018, donating millions to fund education for underprivileged youth. He has used his platform to advocate for peace and provide opportunities for kids facing the same dangers he once did. No story hits harder than Javer's Crittenden's. Drafted in the first round by the Lakers in 2007, his future seemed limitless. But behind the bright lights of Staples Center, he was living a very different life. Shortly after joining the league, Crittenden became involved with the Mansfield Gangster Crips. Unlike some players who merely grew up around gangs, Crittenden actively participated in gang activity. In 2011, his double life came crashing down. He was implicated into shootings in Atlanta, one of which tragically killed Julian Jones, a 22-year-old mother of 4. Authorities allege the shooting was retaliation against a rival Bloods affiliate. What followed was a downward spiral, a 12-count indictment, accusations of murder, firearms charges, and gang activity. Crittenden eventually pleaded guilty to manslaughter in 2015, receiving a 23-year sentence, later reduced to 10. He was released in 2023. But his case remains the clearest and darkest example of how gang ties can derail an NBA career and destroy lives. Few NBA stories embody redemption as powerfully as Caron Butler's. Unlike players who got caught up in rumors or a single incident, Butler's ties to street life were undeniable and very nearly permanent. By the time he was 12 years old, Butler was already running drugs in his hometown of Racine, Wisconsin, and he wasn't just dabbling, he was deep in it. He even admits in his autobiography that he used to sell crack cocaine out of a little red wagon in his neighborhood, pushing it down the street like it was nothing more than a kid's toy. By 15, Butler had been arrested nearly 15 times. Guns, drugs, possession charges. His rap sheet read like a career criminal's. The environment he grew up in was one of constant violence, drive-bys, shootouts, funerals of friends who never made it to 18. At one point, Butler even accidentally shot himself at a high school dance while carrying a revolver. A story he kept hidden from his mother, but later revealed in his memoir Tough Juice. The defining moment came when ATF agents raided his high school during a sting operation and discovered a gun in his locker. For most kids, that would have been the end of the road. But for Butler, it was the turning point. Sent to a youth detention center, he discovered basketball, and with it, a new way forward. Butler committed himself to the game, guided by mentors and driven by a mother who never gave up on him. He earned a scholarship to UConn, blossomed into a college star, and was drafted 10th overall in 2002 by the Miami Heat. Against all odds, he had escaped the cycle that swallowed so many of his peers. Yet Butler never hid his past. In fact, he embraced it. In Tough Juice, he laid everything bare, detailing the guns, the drugs, the chaos, and how basketball pulled him out. He became a living example that no matter how far you've fallen, there's always a path to redemption. Ironically, Butler's street experience even played a role in one of the NBA's most infamous scandals, the 2009 Washington Wizards locker room gun incident. When tensions exploded between Gilbert Arenas and Javer's Crittenden, both brandishing firearms in a heated standoff, it was Butler, the man who once lived that life, who stepped in to defuse the situation. He convinced Crittenden to put his gun down, preventing what could have been a deadly outcome. Today, Butler isn't remembered as a gangster, but as a role model. Dwayne Wade once said, "Caron is an unbelievable role model. He turned his life around and set a shining example for others." Hollywood actor Mark Wahlberg even praised Butler's story as one of the most dramatic and inspirational turnarounds he had ever seen. Caron Butler proves that your past doesn't have to define your future. He went from selling drugs and dodging bullets to making millions in the NBA, becoming a family man, and using his platform to inspire others. His story stands as one of the most powerful reminders that redemption is possible, even for those who start life on the darkest path imaginable. Then there's Paul Pierce, a Hall of Famer whose career was nearly overshadowed by gang speculation and one terrifying night that nearly ended his life. The most infamous moment came during the 2008 NBA playoffs. Late in a game against the Atlanta Hawks, Pierce flashed a hand gesture toward Al Horford, a gesture that experts quickly identified as a Peru blood sign. The NBA wasted no time, slapping him with a $25,000 fine for what Commissioner David Stern called a menacing and unique gesture with potential gang connotations. Pierce denied any intent. He insisted it was nothing more than his personal pregame ritual, symbolizing blood, sweat, and tears. Celtics GM Danny Ainge defended him, saying Pierce had been doing it for years before games, long before anyone ever labeled it gang-related. But the fact that Pierce grew up in Inglewood, California, a city dominated by Bloods and Crips, made the interpretation all the more believable to fans and media. For years, fans whispered about Pierce's connections, some claiming once you're tied to a gang, you never really leave. Others argued the entire narrative was unfair, that a man who became a millionaire NBA star and Finals MVP shouldn't be defined by a hand gesture or a violent attack he barely survived. What makes Pierce's case so fascinating is how much of it is about perception versus reality. Did he ever have gang ties? There's no documented evidence. But growing up in Inglewood meant that gang culture was impossible to ignore. And a single gesture in 2008 was enough to reopen questions he thought were buried. In the end, Pierce's legacy wasn't destroyed by these rumors. He went on to win a championship with the Celtics, earn Finals MVP honors, and later be inducted into the Basketball Hall of Fame. Yet the shadows of those incidents, the gesture, the stabbing, the Inglewood upbringing, remain part of his larger story. Paul Pierce's career reminds us how quickly a narrative can spin out of control when gang culture intersects with professional sports. One moment you're a Finals MVP. The next you're being fined for gang signs on national television. His story is a testament to survival, both on and off the court. If Crittenden's story was about destruction, Stephen Jackson's was about acceptance. Jackson has always been open about his ties to the Bloods, admitting they were inherited from his environment growing up. By his own words, he was never a gang leader or shot caller, but he wore the red bandana proudly and embraced the culture. What makes Jackson unique is his transparency. Unlike most athletes who run from these affiliations, he openly discussed his past, even admitting to selling drugs as a teen. The death of his half-brother and his father's prison time only deepened his bond with gang life, and in 2022, he reignited controversy by declaring that every real one should check in with gangs when traveling to new cities, a statement that split public opinion. Critics said he was glorifying gangs, while supporters believed he was simply respecting his roots. Jackson's honesty raises difficult questions. Is staying true to where you came from admirable, or reckless when those roots are steeped in violence? Then there's Zach Randolph, whose ties were murkier but no less controversial. During his early years in Portland, he surrounded himself with the Hoops family, a group of childhood friends suspected of gang activity. Police reports connected them to the Crips and to violent crimes, including shootings and drug trafficking. Randolph himself was never convicted, but suspicion followed him everywhere. He was once cited for drag racing downtown with a firearm in his car, and later arrested in Los Angeles for marijuana possession in a notorious gang-heavy housing project. Even an MTV Cribs episode of his home raised eyebrows among law enforcement because of the people in his circle. Randolph's story represents that gray area. Was he an active participant, or just guilty of loyalty to the wrong friends? Either way, his entourage made sure trouble was never far behind. Chicago native Tony Allen was another player whose gang ties were more than speculation. His name has long been linked to the Gangster Disciples, one of Chicago's most notorious gangs. In 2005, he was indicted for aggravated battery after a fight outside a restaurant turned into a shooting. Though he was later acquitted, the case highlighted the violent world he came from. During the 2008-9 playoffs, Allen even received death threats in Chicago, forcing teams to increase security when he joined the Memphis Grizzlies. Management directly asked him whether his ties to the gangster disciples would conflict with teammate Zach Randolph, who was rumored to be linked to a different faction. Allen downplayed it, but the fact that an NBA general manager had to ask such a question shows just how real these connections were. Rappers like Slim Thug accused Harden of false claiming, pretending to be affiliated when he wasn't. The accusations resurfaced in 2024 when Harden posted photos with members of the YSL crew, a group facing gang-related RICO charges. Still, no hard evidence proves Harden was more than socially connected to blood-affiliated rappers, unlike others on this list. His story is more about speculation, and his silence on the matter keeps the rumors alive. While Harden's case is unclear, DeMar DeRozan's story is one of survival. Raised in Compton, California, he grew up surrounded by Crips territory, losing family members and close friends to gang violence. His uncle was described as one of the most notorious Crips in the area, and even his mother attended multiple funerals in a single year due to gang wars. But unlike Crittenden or Jackson, DeRozan never joined a gang himself. Instead, he credits his father for keeping him focused on basketball, never letting him miss a practice or game. In interviews, DeRozan has admitted to survivor's guilt, saying he lost so many people before even reaching college that it left lasting scars. Basketball became his lifeline, his way out of Compton's cycle of violence. His story is a reminder that some players didn't choose gangs, they escaped them. From Javers Crittenden's tragic downfall to Caron Butler's redemption, these stories reveal the complicated relationship between the NBA and gang culture. Some players carried their pasts into the league, others tried to distance themselves, and a few became symbols of survival and transformation.